I followed a trail that my GPS said didn't exist for almost 2 miles before I realized the trail markers were hand-painted. Not by the Park Service, not by any trail crew, by someone. The blazes were the right color, the right size, the right height on the trees. But when I looked closer, the paint was fresh, wet in places, and the marks weren't rectangles like official blazes. They were slightly off, taller, narrower, like someone who had seen real trail markers but had never made one before was copying them from memory. I was 2 miles deep on a trail that somebody had fabricated, leading me somewhere that wasn't on any map, through forest that got thicker with every step. And when I turned around to walk back, the blazes behind me were gone. The trees I had been following for 2 miles were clean, no paint, no marks, and poor, just bark, like they had never been there. I was standing in the middle of the woods with no trail beneath my feet and no markers in any direction, and the sun was going down. I was 27. This was October of 2023. I was doing a day hike in the Daniel Boone National Forest in Kentucky. I had been to this park maybe 15 times. I knew the main trails. I had the All Trails app. I had a paper map in my pack as backup. I started at the Whittleton Campground trailhead around noon. The plan was a 7-mile loop that I had done before. Easy terrain, well marked. I'd be back at my car by 4. For the first 3 miles, everything was normal. Standard white blazes on the trees every 50 yards or so. Clear path, moderate foot traffic. I passed 2 other hikers heading the other direction. Normal day. Then at around mile 3, I hit an intersection I didn't recognize. Subscribe right now if you haven't. What I walked into on that fake trail is something the park rangers are still trying to understand. Drop a like too. 1 second. The intersection had 2 options. Left was the official trail. I could see the white blaze on a tree about 30 yards down. Right was another path, narrower, less worn. But it also had a white blaze on a tree about 20 yards in. I checked my app. The app only showed the left trail. The right path didn't exist on the map. I figured it was a social trail, an unofficial path made by hikers over time that eventually gets worn into something that looks legit. They're common in national forests. Some of them are shortcuts. Some lead to viewpoints or swimming holes. I took the right path. The blazes continued. Every 40 to 50 yards, white, on the left side of the tree facing the direction of travel. Textbook placement. I walked for about 20 minutes. The trail was getting narrower. The canopy was getting thicker. The ground was softer, less packed, fewer boot prints. I checked my GPS. According to the app, I was a 1/4 mile off any known trail. I stopped and looked at the last blaze I had passed. That's when I saw it. The paint was fresh, not weeks old. Not days, hours. I touched it. My finger came back white, wet paint. Someone had been on this trail today, painting blazes, leading hikers off the real trail and onto this one. I turned around immediately. I walked back the way I came. 50 yards, 100 yards, 200 yards. I was looking for the blazes I had been following. They weren't there. The trees were clean. Every single blaze I had followed for 2 miles was gone. Not faded, not covered, gone. Like they had been wiped off, or like they had never been there at all. I felt the ground drop out from under me. I was standing on a narrow footpath in dense forest with no markers and no GPS trail, and the sun was starting to dip behind the ridge. I pulled out my compass. I knew the trailhead was roughly east. I oriented myself and started walking, not on the path, through the woods, straight line east. The terrain was rough, deadfall, ravines, thorny undergrowth that tore at my legs. I walked for about 40 minutes before I heard traffic. A road. I pushed through the last belt of trees and came out on a county road about a mile south of the trailhead. I walked back to my car on the shoulder. It took another 30 minutes. I got to my car at 5:15. The sun was nearly gone. I reported it to the Park Service the next morning. I told them about the fake blazes, the fresh paint, the path that led nowhere. A ranger went out with me that afternoon. We drove to the trailhead and hiked to the intersection where I had turned right. The right path was still there, but the blazes were gone. every single one. The trees were clean. The ranger looked at the bark where I told him the paint had been. He found traces, faint white residue in the bark texture. Someone had wiped the paint off, but hadn't gotten it all. He scraped a sample. We walked the path for about half a mile. No blazes, no paint, but the trail was there, worn, used. It went deeper into the forest before dead-ending at a dry creek bed. At the creek bed, the ranger found something. A clearing just off the path, maybe 15 feet in diameter. The ground was trampled, flat. In the center of the clearing, there was a circle of stones. Inside the circle, there were ashes, recent, and around the ashes there were objects. I'm not going to describe them all, because the ranger asked me not to. But I will tell you that some of them were personal belongings. A watch, a phone with a cracked screen, a single hiking boot. Items that belonged to people who might have followed those same blazes, down that same fake trail, to this same clearing, where the path ends and the forest closes in, and the only person who knows you're there is the one who painted the marks. The ranger filed a report. The trail intersection was flagged, and a warning sign was posted. As far as I know, the fake blazes have not reappeared, but the ranger told me something before I left that I haven't stopped thinking about. He said this was the second report of fabricated trail markers in the Daniel Boone in 3 years. The first was on a different trail 12 miles away. That hiker had also followed fake blazes into dense forest. That hiker also found a clearing with a fire pit and personal belongings. That hiker made it out. The ranger paused after he said that. Then he said not everyone who follows a trail comes back to report where it goes. He didn't say anything else. He didn't need to.
I was above the tree line, on a 14,000-foot peak in Colorado, when the weather turned, and I made a decision that almost killed me. But the weather isn't what I need to tell you about. What I need to tell you about is the man I saw sitting on a rock at 13,800 feet in the middle of a whiteout, who was wearing a t-shirt and jeans and no pack and no jacket, and who looked at me as I stumbled past him and said, "You're going the wrong way." Not yelling, not concerned, calm, conversational, like we were standing in a parking lot instead of on a mountain in a storm that had dropped visibility to 10 feet. He was sitting on a boulder with his hands on his knees and snow accumulating on his shoulders, and he was not shivering, he was not cold, he was not in distress, he was waiting. And when I turned around 30 seconds later to ask him which way I should go, he was gone. The boulder was empty. The snow where he had been sitting was undisturbed. No footprints, no marks, just a flat white rock in a flat white storm, and nothing else in any direction. If this story is already giving you chills, drop a comment. Have you ever been alone on a mountain when the weather turned? Let me tell you the rest. I was 41, an experienced mountaineer. I had summited over 30 peaks in Colorado. I wasn't reckless. I checked the weather. I started early. I brought layers. I brought an emergency bivvy. I had a GPS beacon. I did everything right. But the mountains don't care about your preparation. They don't care about your experience. On August 19th of 2024, I was climbing a standard route on a 14er near Leadville. I started at 4 a.m. I was above treeline by 7. The forecast called for afternoon thunderstorms, which is normal for Colorado in summer. The rule is, be below treeline by noon. I was on the summit by 10:30. I started descending at 10:45. Then the sky went dark, not gradually, in minutes. A front moved in from the west, faster than anything I had seen in 20 years of climbing. By 11, the wind was gusting to 50. By 11:15, the snow started. By 11:30, I couldn't see 20 feet in front of me. I was at 13,800 feet on a talus field with no trail markers visible and the temperature dropping fast. My GPS showed the route down, but in a whiteout, every cairn looks the same and every ridge looks like the right ridge, until it isn't. That's when I saw him. I came around a boulder, and there he was, sitting on a flat rock about 10 feet to my right. T-shirt, jeans, sneakers, no hat, no gloves, no pack, no poles. Snow was landing on him, and not melting. It was accumulating on his shoulders and his hair, like he was a piece of the landscape. His skin was not blue, not red from windburn. It was the color of the rock he was sitting on, gray, neutral. He looked at me and said, "You're going the wrong way." I stopped. I yelled over the wind and asked him what he meant. He pointed to the left, down a ridge I hadn't considered. He said, "Go that way. You'll find the trail." I looked in the direction he was pointing. I couldn't see anything, just white. I turned back to ask him how he knew. The rock was empty. I walked to it. I touched it. Cold, snow-covered. No impression where a person had been sitting. No melted spot. No footprints on the ground around it. Nothing. He had been there 30 seconds ago. Solid. Real. Sitting in a blizzard, in a t-shirt, and speaking to me in a voice I could hear over 50-mile-an-hour wind. And now he was gone like he had never existed. I went the direction he pointed. I don't know why. I had no reason to trust a hallucination. Altitude does things to your brain. Hypothermia does things to your brain. Exhaustion does things to your brain. I knew that. I've read the studies. Climbers at altitude report seeing people who aren't there all the time. It has a name, third man syndrome, the sensation that someone is with you when you're alone in extreme conditions. Your brain manufactures a companion because it thinks you need one to survive. That's the rational explanation. That's the one I want to believe. But the rational explanation doesn't account for one detail. He pointed left. I had been planning to go right. Right looked more familiar. Right felt like the correct direction based on my mental map of the descent route. But he said, "You're going the wrong way," and pointed left, and left turned out to be correct. A hallucination draws on information your brain already has. If my brain already knew left was correct, I wouldn't have been heading right. Something outside my own head knew the route better than I did. Something that was sitting on a rock in a blizzard, wearing the same clothes a dead man had been wearing when they found his body 200 feet away 5 years earlier. I descended below tree line in about 40 minutes. The storm continued for another 2 hours. I made it to my car alive. I sat in the driver's seat with the heater on full blast, and I shook for an hour, not from cold anymore, from the math. From the realization that if I had gone right, like I intended, I would have walked off a ridge into a 600-foot drainage, the same drainage where the man in the t-shirt was found in 2019, the same wrong turn he made. I would have made his mistake. I would have died the same way, on the same mountain, in the same storm. Following the same instinct to go right when left was the only way down. But something stopped me. Something that knew the route because it had gotten it wrong once before. I don't know if the dead come back to mountain ridges to sit in storms and redirect the living. I don't know if that's what happened, but I know that going left saved my life, and going right had ended his. And I know that a man who shouldn't have been there told me which way to go, and then vanished without leaving a single footprint in 4 inches of fresh snow. And I know that I'm alive because I listened to him, and he's dead because nobody did the same for him.
I found a pair of children's shoes in the middle of a trail 9 miles from the nearest trailhead in the Cascade Range in Washington. They were small, maybe a size 3, pink with white laces, sitting side by side in the middle of the path, neatly placed, laces tied, like someone had taken them off carefully and set them down and walked away barefoot into the wilderness. There were no footprints beyond the shoes, not in front of them, not behind them, not on either side. The trail was damp, soft, it held prints well. My own boot prints were clear and defined. But around those pink shoes, the dirt was smooth, undisturbed. Like the shoes had been placed there without anyone standing near them to do it. I was 9 miles in, alone, and a pair of children's shoes were sitting in the middle of the trail with no explanation and no child and no parent and no prints, and the forest around me was so quiet I could hear my own heartbeat. I was 24, experienced solo hiker. This was September of 2024. I was doing a 3-day backpacking trip in the North Cascades, remote terrain, dense old growth, miles between designated camps, the kind of wilderness where you can hike all day and not see another person. I had seen one other hiker the entire trip, a man heading out on the morning of day 1. After that, nothing, just me in the trees and the sound of my boots on the trail. Day 2, I was making good time toward my second camp. The weather was cool, overcast, a light mist that hung in the canopy and made everything look like a black and white photograph. I came around a bend in the trail and saw the shoes. I stopped about 5 feet from them. I didn't touch them. I looked at the trail surface around them. Clean, no prints, no drag marks, no signs of a struggle, no signs of anything. Just 2 small pink shoes sitting on packed dirt like they had materialized there. I looked at the shoes more closely. They were clean, not muddy, not worn. They looked almost new. The laces were white, no dirt on them. The soles had minimal wear. These were not shoes that had been hiked in. These were shoes that had been carried, brought here deliberately, placed here with intention. I looked up and scanned the forest on both sides of the trail. Nothing. Mist, trees, silence. I called out. Hello. My voice hit the trees and died. No echo, no response. Just that heavy, wet silence that old growth forest produces. I stepped around the shoes without touching them. I kept hiking. For the next mile, I was looking over my shoulder every 30 seconds. Not because I heard anything, because the silence felt wrong, loaded, like the forest was holding something it wanted to say. At mile 10, I found the second pair. Same style, same size, same pink, same white laces, same perfect placement in the center of the trail, side by side, neatly positioned, no prints, no explanation. I stared at them for a long time, then I kept walking. Half a mile later, I found the third pair. This time I stopped and took a photo. I didn't want to touch them, I didn't want to be near them, but I needed proof. Proof that I wasn't losing my mind. Proof that someone had placed 3 pairs of identical children's shoes at intervals along a trail 9 miles from the nearest road in wilderness, where I hadn't seen another human being in 36 hours. I didn't find a 4th pair. I reached my camp. I set up my tent. I built a fire. I sat there as the light faded and I looked at the photo on my phone. 3 pairs of pink shoes, same trail, same condition, same impossible placement, no prints, no child, no explanation. I barely slept. Every sound in the forest felt amplified. The wind, the creek nearby, a branch falling somewhere in the dark. I kept thinking about who placed those shoes and how far they had to carry them and why. And I kept thinking about the prints, or the lack of them. My boots left clear impressions in the trail dirt, deep enough to see the tread pattern. Whoever placed those shoes didn't leave a mark. Not one. Not at any of the 3 locations. Either they weighed nothing or they never touched the ground. In the morning, I packed up and hiked out. I passed the spots where the shoes had been. All 3 pairs were gone. The trail was clean, smooth, not even an impression where the shoes had been sitting. I have the photo. One photo of the 3rd pair. I showed it to the ranger at the trailhead. She looked at it for a long time. Then she asked me exactly where I found them. I told her. She typed something into her computer. Then she looked at me and said, "You're the 4th person to report finding shoes on that section of trail this year." She said all 4 reports described the same thing. Pink children's shoes, multiple pairs, no footprints, shoes present one day and gone the next. She said they had sent rangers to investigate after the 2nd report. The rangers found nothing, no shoes, no prints, no evidence of anyone being on the trail. She said they didn't have an explanation. She said the only consistent detail across all 4 reports was the size of the shoes. All of them were the same size 3. A child between 5 and 7 years old. She asked me if I wanted to file a formal report. I did. She handed me the form, and as I was filling it out, she said one more thing. She said there's a memorial marker about 2 miles past where you found the last pair. It's for a girl who went missing on that trail in 2011. She was 6 years old. She was last seen wearing pink shoes. They never found her. They never found the shoes either, until hikers started finding them over and over in the same stretch of trail, always placed neatly, always in pairs, always gone by morning. I finished the form. I handed it back. I walked to my car. I drove home. I have not been back to the North Cascades. And every time I see a pair of pink children's shoes in a store or on a sidewalk or in a playground, I feel something cold move through my chest. Because I know those shoes. I've seen them before, 9 miles from anywhere, sitting in the middle of a trail, waiting for someone to find them, the way they've been waiting for 13 years. Those were 3 true stories from hikers who walked into the wilderness and found something the wilderness was not supposed to contain. If you made it to the end, tell me which one shook you the most. Drop it in the comments. If you've had a hiking experience that still doesn't make sense, leave your story below. The most disturbing ones get featured in future videos. Subscribe if you haven't. New stories every week. Share this with anyone who hikes alone. And the next time you're on a trail and you see something that doesn't belong there, don't pick it up. Don't follow it. Don't try to make sense of it. Just turn around, because not every trail leads where the map says it does. And not everything you find in the woods was left there by accident.